Yeah, now we're recording. If you're gonna give
All
me a
right.
plug, at least make sure people can hear it.
So, guys, we've been going through this book, Best Hour of Your Day, of their day, and this is a book that I recommended it to Kim after reading it. Kim and I listened to the podcast. I'm also part of the mentor group. Laron, I know since we've been in shelter in place, I put you onto it, and you said you wanted to listen to all of the podcasts starting from 1 all the way through. I don't know where you are.
You could not have done that, even if we started in March.
There's a long way to go.
Good. Okay. So we've been going through this, and we're at the end. And as I shared with you at the beginning, Jason was so gracious to join us to be able to ask him questions about his book. We've been going through some of the things that Jason spoke about, really trying to understand how this actually is applicable to us in the box. And then recently, as we've all experienced a level of turmoil to some degree within our lives as it relates to CrossFit as well. So this also gives us an opportunity to really tie some of these lessons to us as coaches, and also to really get Jason's input, being that he has experience, he's really tapped into the CrossFit ecosystem. And as I shared with you on Instagram, feel free to use this as an opportunity to ask him any question, because it'll be really helpful to really understand where we are, what role we play in this in a larger scope in CrossFit. So with that said, Jason, thank you for coming.
Well, and can I say, first of all, thank you for having me, Chris.
Thank you.
When you were saying that, like it's very surreal to me still that people are reading a book I wrote, and actually not just, you write a book and you're like, someone will read this, and you don't really ever get to interact with them or talk to them. So the fact that 4 people, even if I wrote the book and you were the only 4 that read it, but that you cared enough to like talk about it, it's like really humbling for me. So thank you guys. Like it really, as you were saying that, I'm like realizing how important it is for me. So I really appreciate you guys doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for writing it.
Thank you.
I think I was talking to somebody on the recent podcast. You probably haven't. It was only today, I think. Is it Liren?
Yeah, that's him with the beard.
So you haven't caught up to this episode, but I said, like, I asked him about imposter syndrome, and I feel like a little bit like I still have that, to some extent. And, even though you write a book, it kind of feels like, I wrote it, but I didn't. I don't know. It's a very strange feeling.
Yeah, I think it's a feeling that a lot of us feel like when you coach or when you're trying to do something new, it's like, man, what am I doing here? Am I really? Yeah.
So Jason, a couple of things. If you look at side by side, if you look at Liron and Brian, they started growing their beards literally at the beginning of shelter in place. And so they have.
You guys are in California, right?
Yeah, San Francisco.
Because you keep saying shelter in place. It's a very Californian thing.
Yeah. I'm from Brooklyn. I like to say lockdown, but
lockdown.
Right. So
that's new for you guys.
No, we've been
for the beards, I mean.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Laron, you're Israeli.
I had a beard, but it was like this before. That's like, I'm from Israel, so that's how
I heard you say that earlier, but obviously there's a misconception, Laron. It's like, just because you're from Israel or Jewish doesn't, everybody assumes you got like the payas going and the long beard, but that's not exactly true. Like there are plenty of close-shaven Jewish people.
Yeah, but no, like most Israelis, just like, it's not a beard, but it's just like everybody has like, nobody's clean. Nobody's just walking around like clean, like John or Chris right now. Nobody like.
Right.
Yeah. And I never look like John or Chris.
That's pretty good growth for 3 months for both of you. That's impressive.
It seems like it's going to continue for a while. So we'll see.
You guys are going to be a little longer than most, they say.
Yeah.
I've been growing mine out for 3 months too.
You've been growing that man bun.
It's actually not a joke. Yeah. Oh, actually, one non-CrossFit question for you, Jason, is I haven't actually have not cut my hair in 3 months. So I decided I'm just going to let it grow out. So what are your tips for long hair?
We're in the same place right now because I had long hair, but it was really short, and I haven't cut mine since the quarantine, as I refer to it. My tip would be, if you're gonna go long hair, make sure it's long enough that you can do a ponytail.
Oh,
You
okay.
don't want that in between where you can't tie it back, especially if you're into working out. It needs to be able to be tied back and out of the way. Where there are times when I would cut it and realize it was just too short, and then it would come out mid-workout and it was in your face. So you have to go all in, I guess is what I'm trying to
They all
just
go all
just like
in.
the chapter in the book. Go
You
all
gotta
in.
commit. You gotta
You
commit.
gotta pass that phase.
What
Yeah.
about you, Chris? Have you been growing yours out too? Is that
Yeah,
is that
no,
the extent of it?
I cut my hair every week, once a week.
Yeah.
With $300 clippers.
You don't have to tell them that.
Yeah, but you know what?
But that's
He's still
the-
spending less money than we are on haircuts.
that's
Hey,
true.
that's
Right.
true. That's true. Alrighty. So, Laurent, I think we ended up chapter 22.
No.
25.
25.
25. Okay. So,
Oh, so you guys have been doing, are you done with the book?
we're almost. And
Okay.
then we're gonna- yeah.
We all read it. We're going like a few chapters at a time.
Yep. So instead of asking each other like what our thoughts were on the particular chapter, I wanted to give this the opportunity, since we have Jason, since we have like Jay is the actual author, we can just ask him like what he thought, or what he was. Obviously, it's his word, so we have an idea what he thought. But really, with regards to chapter 25, you never know what someone else is going through, and just feel free to share some of our own experiences as we have been doing with regards to coaching, etc. And when we see people in the box, even though we haven't seen people in the box for the last 4 months, but you get the point.
Absolutely. So, are you asking me already?
Yes.
What is the question?
So when you wrote this chapter, like what was your motivation in writing this chapter?
Okay, well, let's be clear. You guys have probably a better recollection of the book right now than I do, because I
Yeah.
haven't read it recently. But that chapter is about someone that I met at a level 1, correct? That's that chapter.
That's correct.
So I really, the amount of times that you've come in contact with, what I would dub assholes at a level 1 is very rare. So I really remember this guy because it was like standout. And maybe out of 200 plus seminars I worked, 3 times was it like, this guy's a jerk. And never right at the beginning of a seminar, like never right away, and never every trainer before the What is CrossFit lecture, like, what's up with this guy? So it really stood out. And I always prided myself. I think I talk about it in that chapter. And there was another time I worked at level 2 where someone was giving us. Have you guys taken your level 2?
Yeah.
So just Chris.
And Laurent is a level 3.
Laurent.
Yep.
Oh, big guy, Laurent. He's certified. Let's see, Israeli, and his parents are giving him that pressure. Mine. You see, in the end of my book, my mom still doesn't think I have a real job, so you get it. One time at a level 2, I remember this woman was giving us a hard time, and Joe Alexander, who's an amazing person, flow master, former Navy SEAL, he was like, Jay, you've got the golden tongue, you take her. And I was like, all right. And then really resonated with me and meant a lot to me, and something that I kind of prided myself on from that moment on, because Joe is someone I really looked up to. And I was like, well, if he thinks that of me, that's who I am. And then, this is, probably a year or 2 later at this seminar. And it was just, man, this kid seems like a jerk. He's not responsive. And, it wasn't until obviously at lunch that we got to the root of it. But for me, it's really just, you guys heard there's a old story about, I don't remember if I say this in the book, about the guy who's coming home from the funeral on the subway. And it's
Mhm.
like, he's coming from a funeral, his kids are acting up, and someone's
Oh yeah, yeah.
basically saying, "Hey, can you control your kids?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're coming from, their mother's funeral." And that's always what I try to think about. Like, you just never know. And you mentioned, we're not at the box, but really, I hope all of these lessons are just life lessons,
Right.
especially like you mentioned this time, right? Like, what more important time in the world ever is there to really look at someone and be like, we don't know what you've gone through, so we're just, we need to accept you, and we need to assume you're not being an asshole, but you've gone through some tough things, as I have, and be open to that. And I think, from a coach's perspective, you guys have, if you've coached enough classes, you realize you're going to deal with all sorts of personalities, and just always assume that they're coming to you with good intentions. Don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance or stupidity. And I think for a long time I was just like, this person's a jerk because they don't see things from my view, my vantage point. And then I started realizing that's a good thing. I mean, every fight I have with my wife is because we're not seeing things from the same vantage point. And then you realize, but if we always were, it wouldn't be a very enjoyable relationship either. So you need those challenges, but it's important to stop and realize, we don't know what happened. And of course, in this situation, going through a breakup, it was tough, and I think when you can put yourself in those people's shoes, it really makes a difference.
John, have you ever had a situation, especially for you, given that you do a lot of personal training, have you ever had a situation that similar to this?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I would say in general, the people that you feel don't like you the most usually end up being the people that do like you the most. It's like, it's that, I don't know what it is, but there's like, I guess it's those people that are like really introverted, or they have like, they're really just shy. And so it comes off almost like you guys are saying, like, they just don't like you. But in reality, it's not, they're just, getting to know somebody is it's just very uncomfortable for them. And then once they get comfortable with you, they like, they'll do anything for you. Like they have a lot of respect and a lot of love for you, but it's just, you have to sometimes, it's just giving them time to get comfortable. And some people, it takes months to get there. So yeah, I really learned from having some of those one-on-one clients where I was like, wow, you really just gotta not make any assumptions about what someone's feeling about you just because of their facial expression or the fact that they don't say a lot of words.
Okay. So, Iran, chapter 26, navigate without a map. I think that's appropriate for you.
Why is that?
Just because. How about it?
Yeah, I think it's, especially now, it comes a little bit more into play. Like let's say we had the plan of doing this 1, 2, 3, 4, and COVID struck in, and CrossFit is blown up to hell, and we find another things to do. So find a plan B, or like do things smart, but know that the plans may change, and it's okay that things will change. But be smart about how you do it. And I mean, yeah, like if you're in the military, then you always, that it never goes according to plan A. Like that almost never happens. There's always like some changes, something happens for better or for worse, and you just gotta be ready to like deal with it smartly and like understand it, and not just like go like berserk, like, oh okay, I can't deal with it. Like, you gotta keep it cool. That's life. I mean, that's business, that's life, that's CrossFit, that's anything.
But I mean, It does seem particularly challenging at this very moment, though, just with the number of variables sort of up in the air. Particularly as it comes to sort of fitness and getting back, sort of, whether it's getting back to the gym or sort of that, the direction or, and I think complicated with that is just the uncertainty in terms of time, right? It just feels like there's so many things that are out of control or out of one's control. I mean, sometimes I'm one that likes to control a lot of stuff and feel like I'm on top of it. I came back home last night and just was wiped out because there's like just kind of another thing that was sort of just felt like out of my ability to sort of track. And I was like, and this is more referring to sort of being sort of out, the outdoor classes and stuff, like just something new. Just another wrinkle variable in terms of just trying to get across that finish line being sort of to a reopen.
So I'm going to say, again, I'm sorry.
No, what were you going to ask, Chris?
No. I was going to go to chapter 27, but go ahead.
You guys buzz through these chapters.
We actually also want to make space to ask you.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, you mentioned this time, especially Brian, it's like we have to realize what we can and we can't control. Like you guys are out there, you have no control over anything as far as the shelter in place goes. And I think for too long, and I find myself still doing it, I try to make everything perfect. And especially when it comes to business, I found no one cares if it's perfect, nor do they ever know. And you could take forever. This book is a great example. I was editing it, and I could have come up with new there's like 5 other chapters that are, like the deleted scenes, if you will, that will either go into another book or at some point, but you can continue to drive yourself crazy. And I try now to be more of the mindset of done is better than perfect. And people don't really, even for business, like no one understands that little 2% tweak that you're trying to make doesn't matter to anyone but you. So that was what I was going to add about that. But especially this time, the circle of influence and circle of control.
Yep.
It's hard to remember that. And sometimes when everything else is out of your control, you then try to control those things you can even more, which maybe a lot of people are going through right now.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I think for us also, besides the fact that COVID and CrossFit, none of us are the affiliate owner of where we coach at, and Chris is like, so we're all,
Jay already knows.
we're all be a little bit like disappointed or not happy with the way things go,
Well, and to be fair, that's a woman, right, Chris?
Yep.
You were saying?
Yep.
So she's not on here to say anything, but in fairness, she's kind of navigating without a map too. Like, and she didn't, we were talking about on today's podcast, like it was literally 18 days ago, maybe 19, a text goes out, and all of a sudden her life is turned upside down, no different than all, yours and mine. So there was no rule book for what the right protocol is should the founder of CrossFit make a racist tweet. Like that wasn't in the affiliate handbook, if you will, right? Like now it will be going forward. But so I mean, in fairness, it was out of her control just as much as ours and yours.
Sure.
Not that I think she shouldn't be an affiliate.
Just
I just think, I mean, I'm interested in your opinion, right? Changes were made. I spoke about it today. Changes were made. I don't know what else. It's like when you're fighting. You ever gonna do a fight? Are you guys married?
All of these guys are except for me. Just saying.
Well,
you. Just saying.
That might be the smarter decision. But but you ever like fighting with your wife or significant other, and then you apologize and you're like, you're still mad at them? Like, no. I remember someone once said to me, like, what are you trying to get now? Like they apologize. Like you need to move on, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. For us, it's like, I forgive you, I'm okay, but I need, like, just give me an hour to cool off. Just
Yeah, and that's different. That's different than continuing to escalate the things.
yeah.
So that goes to the next chapter, which is to stay in your lane, which is, when I read this chapter, I always think about it from a book I was reading about Tony Dungy years ago about football, when he was coaching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they sucked. And he actually brought them to a level in the year before they made it to the Super Bowl and won. He got fired, right? And he subsequently took the standard that he used and took that to, I believe it was the Baltimore Colts, and implemented the same standard, and they won. And in particular, what he taught was for linemen to play their position or stay in their lane and just block the opponent in front of them and just do that job and do it very well, almost like virtuosity. And if you do it incredibly well, uncommonly well, then that's how you win. And that's how he built the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the level before John Gruden came in and took them, right, the following year. And he was able to do that again in Baltimore. So when I read, Jason, when I read your chapter, especially given what Boz tells you, in fact, I had coffee with Boz 2 weeks ago, right? So because he's out.
Oh, you live near you're near Oakland?
Yeah, so it's right across the bridge. So we had coffee. Kimmy, Boz, and I had coffee, and we we're catching up. And so staying in your lane is really, it really just stood out to me to say, if you, and having seen you at the games judging, it's really, you really get the understanding of, if you're not focused on that particular task in judging the athlete, et cetera, and you're focused on everything else, it can go awry, right? So I think of that in terms of a team, to say, even as coaches, for us, if we're executing, not to execute like we're on a rugby scrum or we're like a little kid's soccer team where everybody runs after the ball, but that we're focused on a task at hand or whatever we're assigned to do, and do it really well. And we're not focused on other things or distractions, etc.
Yeah, and to talk about this specifically,
Mhm.
I think it's changed. I think in the book, I'm reading, I have an old draft pulled up because I didn't pull it up early enough, but I think I wrote that we had 40 judges. So it changed since, every year 40, but right now, this past year, there was 20. But, they're all part of seminar staff. They're all type A. They're all typically, whether they're box owners or just used to being in charge. And I am always the guy. This is why I think Boz has me every year, because he knows I'm just going to sit back and be told what to do. And it's hard for a lot of people to do that. And I don't want to name any names, but there's like 2 or 3 people that we all know, it's like, they're going to be the ones, they're going to say something, and they'll put their hand up, and Boz will have gone through a workout, and they'll be like, where are the chalk buckets? And Boz will be like, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know that. And he's so direct. Like Fern and I and Todd, we kind of hang together usually, and we just like, I don't care if I don't understand what the workout is, I will not ask a question, because A, I know it's going to get answered before I need to be prepared, and B, it doesn't change the fact that I just need to watch the movement, right? And I think, so this might have been 2, I remember it was last year too, there was some sort of yoke carry, I think, and I had Vellner, and I forget why, but one of his yellows, so it must have been 35s, got away and started rolling down the competition floor. I don't remember, it was one of the last 2 years. And in my mind, I was like, should I go get that? And then in my mind, I was also like, Boz would say no. Like, not only would I have literally left my lane in that moment, but it was like, that's not my job. I'm not here to control your equipment. I'm here to judge reps. And Vellner went chasing after it. But we see a lot of times, I'm sure if you watch close, like judges, and I do the same. I judge the guy on Mary this past year. I think his name Logan.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you're talking a little bit, but the bigger picture is you're there to do your job, and that's what you should be focusing on. But yeah, it's funny every year to watch the people that just they can't help themselves. They just want to ask more questions. They want to know more, and it's that's not what we're here for. So it's interesting.
As a side note, Laurent, don't you want to judge at the games?
Yeah, for
Level
sure.
three, level three over there.
Once I get my level 4, then
I'm trying to plug you, bro. Come on, I got you. Right?
You
Come on.
could, I mean, I don't
probably
know
not this year. Yeah.
who knows what it's going to be like this year, but I mean, certainly if things get back to normal in 1 year, you just volunteer, go do it. You see the same people every year for the teams and the masters, and this year, we judged with them, especially on the first cut and the second cut, I think they were called.
Yeah.
So everybody's out there. Yeah, it's not as it's not as much fun as it appears to be. There's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of kneeling in uncomfortable positions. A lot of eating. That was another joke. So my other buddy Dustin, who he's now a police officer in, I think San Jose, Dustin Virgil, and he and I, when he would judge, would just sit back and watch 38 of the fittest people, the other 38 people, just slamming sugar all day long because they're just like, you're tired, you're bored, and we would always sit back and watch them and kind of goof on them, how they're eating all these peanut M&Ms. There's always peanut M&Ms, and we're like fasting so we don't go into that bad spiral out of control. So it's really, the judging at the games is kind of like an experiment, I think. It's like, hey, let's take 40 people or 20 this past year. Let's the year we went to San Jose, to Romas. So that was a Wednesday, I think. So basically, was that, Chris?
Ooh, I was like, wow.
So it was a Wednesday. They briefed the workout at like 8. They're like, okay, calls at 2 a.m. So I'm like, all right, you're starting us off extremely sleep deprived. You're putting us in a high stress situation. You're feeding us food that not only is unhealthy, but we're pretty accustomed to eating, and then waiting for this to explode. So it's kind of fun. It's like an experiment to me every year. And I'm always like, I'm not going to be the one to crack. I'm not going to crack.
So does that sound more appealing to you, Laurent, after that description?
Oh, for sure.
It's like boot camp. I mean, Dave and Boz, torture us, but we keep coming back for more for some reason. Like it's one of those scenarios too where you're like, by the last day, you're like, I never want to do this again, and then by now I'm like, oh, I can't wait to do it.
Wow.
You guys have all been through, like, you have something like that where you look back on and it was like your most fond memories, but at the time you're like, this is miserable.
The open does a little bit for me like that. Like, always excited to start it, and by about week 3, 4 or whatever, it's like, oh, I'm ready for this to be done.
Yeah, exactly. And Laurent, were you really in the Israeli army or military? Yeah. So I'm sure like boot camp is probably like, they're probably some of your best friends. I don't know, looking back on, and you're probably miserable, cold at times, like sleep deprived, and now you're like, I miss that,
Yeah, I mean, there's some moments that I know are probably the toughest in my life, but I wouldn't say I miss those moments. But yeah, you miss the camaraderie.
That's a good word.
The whole experience of it, but not. There are some moments that I don't want to relive ever.
So
I can see that. Well, we'll say boot camp is slightly harder than judging the CrossFit Games.
Yeah. So Jay,
like one level. Yeah.
He's being modest. He was in Special Forces of IDF, so
yeah, maybe that wasn't
as
enjoyable.
Yeah,
there was no
right.
Peanut M&M sound good at that point.
Yeah.
Peanut M&M would be great.
So Brian,
yeah,
chapter 28, sir.
Remind me. Let's see.
Okay. It's love you take is equal to the love you make.
Do any of you know whose lyrics those are?
Yeah.
Brian does.
Yeah.
Come
It's, I mean, it's the Beatles. It's the
Yeah.
from Abbey Road.
Yeah. All right.
Look at Brian. 20 points.
That should be common knowledge, Chris.
Should be.
Okay, so I'm just sorry. I'm just refreshing myself here. Talking about. I guess this actually sort of ties back a little bit with what John was saying as well. Like sometimes folks that you might bond with. Oh shoot.
I got it.
I'm sorry. I got to deal with something.
I got
He
you.
didn't study. He didn't study.
Right.
He told his kid to come get him.
So as a side note, one of the things that stood out in this chapter for me was on page 189, you said culture starts from the top and trickles down, right? From the owner to the coaching staff to each and every member. There's no hack to it. And the recent, turmoil, like you said, 19 days, right? It just, seeing that and reading that again is like, boom, it's right there. And at the same time, culture actually existed and exists even though that person's not at the top. Being that Greg is no longer, or soon no longer to be the owner. So it was almost as if the culture was created and the culture existed in excess of the individual person at the top as a counterfact to it.
Yeah, I mean, as you were saying that, I started to think, I'm like, wow, yeah, that is true. I'd never thought about it from that perspective. And I think it's absolutely true. I think it's a slightly different culture with the people that you're surrounding. Like,
Right.
Probably Greg Glassman didn't influence the culture at your box.
That's correct.
But he certainly influenced, and talking about this more, it certainly influenced my behavior at the box. I mean, I was a mini Greg Glass, not racist and not no sexual misconduct. So let me clear that up a little bit.
Yeah.
But more like the brashness and even like the, quote unquote, like libertarian aspect of it. Like my coach would be like, I want to do this. I'm like, then go do it. Don't bug me about it. Start an Olympic lifting class. And if it does well, cool. And I really borrowed a lot of that from him. But the brashness, especially, I mean, the earlier chapters was really pertaining to Albany CrossFit, like the 5K, where I would like yell at people. And it was just because like he was my inspiration as a leader, really. So, but then, so it was actually when I was reading that email to Alyssa from Rocket CrossFit,
Right.
and I was reading it and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's good. Like she got what she deserved. And like, and I stood by that. I was like, that's how I feel right now. Cause that would have annoyed me. And that's how I learned to deal with stuff like that. And it was my wife who was like, no, you can't talk to people like that. Doesn't matter. And I was like, huh. And then I felt myself getting mad that I was mad that I was getting mad in this weird way. Like I was mad that she was right, but more mad that I had been wrong. It was this inner dialogue. And then it was really eye-opening to me that, yeah, like that culture, that aspect of it was trickled down to me and probably a lot of those early box owners. Like, we were at the forefront somewhat of a new movement, and you almost felt like it was us against them. Like I lost friends that were old school personal trainers because they weren't doing CrossFit, or gave up my entire yoga practice because it wasn't CrossFit. And not only was it not, it was dumb, and luckily, I don't think it's because I stopped believing in CrossFit or Coach Glassman, but I realized at some point along the way, a mentor that I talk about in the book a lot, Sasha, kind of started to change my perspective on that. One of the times he said it to me, we were having a meeting and we're talking about the gyms, and he said, Jason, people love you despite you. And I was like, that's cool. I was like, that's cool. Like, that's good. Like, I can be me and they love me. But then I'm like, well, wouldn't it just be cool to be liked because you're a good person? Like like, do you guys watch The Office?
Yeah.
You know, would you rather be feared? What did you say? Would you rather be feared or loved? I'd rather people be afraid of how much they love me, you know, and that's kind of what I've tried to do, you know, and that was really, you know, what the book was. It was almost like, this is behind me now, and now I can just go on and be a good person all the time. And I'm still not, but I try. But it's interesting you put it from that perspective, Chris, because I really hadn't thought about it like that. Like my friend, you know, we had friends, close friends, people on staff. They're like, I threw out my CrossFit shirt, so I'm embarrassed to wear this out, you know. And I think that's still going to take some time. I don't think all the people that read maybe the New York Times article don't necessarily follow the morning chalk up to see that there's a new CEO. So it's going to take a little bit of time for the world to catch up, you know. But hopefully at some point people will not feel that way, that they, you know, shouldn't take pride in wearing their CrossFit, you know. And that's probably where your owner came from a little bit, but I hope that we see that change in the near future.
Right. You know, as you were saying that, Jay, I started thinking, my mom called me, and my mom is trained by David Osorio.
Yeah.
Right? So,
what's her name again?
Constance.
Constance,
right?
Yeah.
So David's like her other adopted son, or her other son, right? And so the two of them are like this. And what was interesting was when everything happened, I never thought I would have a conversation with my mom calling me up to say, so what's going on with Greg Glassman? I'm like, I gotta explain to my mom, right? So yeah, and she like is on top of it. I'm surprised she didn't send me a morning chalk up article, but she sent me a Mercury San Jose, you know, news, like the San Jose Mercury article about there's a new owner. And she just called me. So I'm sure after I get off this Zoom call, I'm going to be talking to my mom about CrossFit, my 81-year-old mom about.
Oh, so you guys are near San Jose too?
Yeah, we're about 45 minutes to an hour away from.
Oh, so you maybe know, I mentioned Dustin earlier. I forget the name of his box. It was like a town with an A. Probably a bunch of those in California.
Aptos,
what was it?
It's not Aptos, is it?
No, not Aptos. I'll look it up later. But, you know, speaking of David, he's one of the people I spoke to. I think it was last weekend. It's kind of all blur, but, you know, he mentioned, I mean, his demographic is not just mixed ethnically, but any type of, you know, everything going on in Brooklyn. And he, you know, one of the things that really resonated with me was what David said. He's like, you know, my kids' class, the kids are calling me, asking me why I'm racist. And he was like, they don't know the difference that it was Greg Glassman or CrossFit, right? All they know is South Brooklyn and David is CrossFit to me. So that was one of like, you know, because to me, I was like, look, he said something incredibly insensitive and dumb, you know, and he should know better than putting anything like that on social media. But I was like, I can move forward. And I hadn't looked at it from that perspective that David did. And that's why I came around a bit for affiliates, because I'm like, man, that's tough. Like, I can't, like, you know. And he said he had his black kids that were like, does CrossFit not want me to do this? And it was, you know, so that was really where it's like, you hear the pain in David's voice, who's someone who I really admire and look up to, and he's very level-headed. And I was like, man, like, I really didn't think about it from that perspective. Now, of course, going back to what I said earlier, we've made the change. Like, now, if you're not an affiliate, you're blaming CrossFit, not a man, you know, that did it, in my opinion. But certainly that was, you know, that was tough to hear that from David, because he was, you know, really hurt by it. And I forgot about the connection with you until you mentioned it. Yeah.
Small world.
Oh.
So, Laurent, 29. Define your success.
I like that chapter. It was, I mean, now I have a friend, so it reminded me, I have a friend back in Israel who's trying to open his own place, and he's thinking about, like, he's talking to me about like how much he should charge for memberships and how many people and stuff like that. I'm like, and he's like, you got to think like a business owner. Don't think like a coach. Think like a business owner. Like, think about the money, because Tel Aviv is expensive and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, remember, like, but don't think, I know you're thinking like a business owner, but think about how would you run the classes? How would you coaches experience will be running the classes? Like, you can't just pack those classes to make money. Like, it's your livelihood, it's your business, but you want to make a good product. You want to coach well. You want to have good coaches that enjoy coaching. You can't just chase the money. Like, you got to have other kinds of stuff that you're going to determine as being successful, or having this amount of athletes, or even outside of coaching and CrossFit, and not just. So I really like that one. Just like, it's not always about the money or how big you are or famous you are, because today it's all about being famous and knows you or who you know, and it's not all about that. It's like a little bit more of like what matters to you as a person, as an athlete, as a coach, probably will resonate with you to the rest of your life more, I think. Yeah.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, those speaking to that point about, like, if you're just focused on making money, then you'll kind of lose sight of why people are actually showing up, right? Which is ties into the other chapter about the experience. And so, it's easy to get caught up like, oh, we need those like newest assault bikes, we need those newest Olympic barbells. But at the end of the day, if members aren't happy with the experience, or coaches aren't happy with the way they're treated, or consistency of what the owner is telling them, it doesn't really matter like what expensive stuff you have. It doesn't matter how much money the box is making. It doesn't matter how much the coaches are getting paid, right? So like that you were able to take a step back and just self-reflect, and then realize it was all the relationships that you built going through 3 boxes that is actually what fulfilled you, not making money or buying shiny new stuff for a shiny new box.
Yeah, then I think for me especially, it was beyond that, when it was like, now who am I and what am I? It was, okay, you can chase money forever, but ultimately it's about the relationships you make and the way you make other people feel. And when Nikki said that to me, it really, it's most of the moments in the book I wrote about because they stood out in my life, and that was one of them. I remember where it was in North Naples CrossFit, listening to her tell me that. I was like, wow, yeah, it's true. I never thought about it like that. I heard Simon Sinek, I think it was Simon Sinek, the guy who wrote Start With Why. He said, if you chase money, it's always double where you're at, that you think will make you happy. And he's like, you're never gonna be there.
Yeah, you can always make more money, but
my brief anecdote on this is my daughter asked me just a couple hours ago. She said, what does rich mean? I said, well, why are you asking me that? She had heard something like that in school, and or something on TV, something about being rich. I said, well, I don't know what the context was, but I said, well, you can measure being rich by money, and that might be what they were talking about. But I told her right then, it's like there's other ways to measure if someone is rich, whether it's let's say you have a loving family, or you have a pet that you're close to, or you have friends and relationships, and so I was trying to give her right then as a sort of hopefully a lesson there, just I think sort of what's in line with what you're just describing as well. It's like there's a lot of different ways to measure that, just beyond what just a monetary value. So I'm not sure if it's sunk into quite the 4-year-old, but I at least gave it a shot.
But at least she asked you a question.
Yeah.
A question that is equally as important, right?
Yeah.
So, Brian, you want to take us out on the final chapter? Life is happening right now.
Let's see. Let me see if we can.
Because it's happening right now.
It's happening right now. It is happening right now. I just got to. refresh my memory. I'm.
You almost drowned.
Yeah.
Oh, you almost drowned, and then you're sort of sitting on the beach there, sort of reflecting on life, if I recall correctly, and then sort of remembering, I think, all of the experiences and sort of richness, I guess, that was in your life. Do I have that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary.
Okay. Well,
Man who almost drowned, right?
That's so true. Yeah, that. I didn't swim again for almost 4 years at Wadapalooza.
Oh wow.
Not in the open water,
Right, right.
which is much harder than it looks.
Hmm.
If you're I'm not a very good swimmer to begin with. So, but
I mean, I guess I was, right there. That's it's an interesting lesson to be sort of reflecting on at this time, and sort of also picking up on some of the things we've already talked about with a lot of the various things going on in the world. And I it's probably something I could grasp onto a little bit more, where like it's chaos out there. I'm kind of feeling like there's a lot of stuff going on, but at the same time, there's a lot of things for me still to be thankful for. And I mean, for me, I'm noticing that I'm a lot shorter, more irritable, and that's just because things are sparking, within me. But I need to be able to take a step back, let's say sit on that beach or take a walk. I've been trying to do more of those, but to remember that I have a lot of, positive things sort of going on, and, no matter what, going to be able to chart, a positive course going forward. But yeah, I think that's sometimes really easy to forget. So I mean, I guess you could sort of equate a lot of these traumas sort of to that near drowning trauma in one sense.
That's kind of surprising to hear from you, Brian, because you're one of the calmer people I've known.
Yeah.
Like at UB, and we've known each other for what, 8 years?
Plus.
Yeah. So I'm like, wow, I can't imagine you like being short or like irritable.
Yeah.
That's not my experience of you. So interesting.
Yeah,
Now, if I ask Amy, she might tell me something different.
We're used to Chris being short and irritable.
You're not.
That's Dave. That's Dave.
That's Dave, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Dave.
the governor. Come on, right? Shake hands and kiss babies. Come on, that's me. So we've finished, but I wanted to, if we still had some time, if the group could ask questions.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, some may have questions about.
I wanted to ask about chapter 22.
Let me reopen the book. What was the name of what was the title?
Failure is inevitable. So where you're talking about how you try to get to the seminar staff, and
of course the level 3 wants to ask about this.
yeah, so yeah, I mean, I heard, like, I know it's super hard. You need to be like super experienced, know your shit, obviously. But just want to hear like firsthand, like about that experience.
Well, I'll try to give you more than was in the book then. I remember driving to my level 1 with my ex from years ago, from Albany to Toronto, because it was the only one on the East Coast for weeks, or if not months. I mean, this is prior to the first one was actually at David's Box in South Brooklyn that I interned at. But I remember driving there, and you kind of, because there was a forum, you would like find out the other people from your area that were interested in CrossFit and going. And the guy, I think his name was Joe, owned or the box in Rochester, which was like 3 hours from Albany. And I knew he was going, and he was like, yeah, I'm going, I'm taking my level 2. And immediately I was jealous. I was like, wait, how do I take that one instead of the level 1? And like, I was just so into CrossFit before even my level 1. I was like, how do I take that? How do I move on to the next one? And as soon as I walked in, I was like, I want to be on staff. And it was a little different over the years. It's changed again. I mean, if you really wanted to be on staff, you've done the hardest part, with the exception of the internship, is passing your level 3. You can't get on staff without your level 3. Then I would say, really just find the email. It's somewhere on CrossFit if you're interested in interning. But back then, there was no clear-cut path, and there was just a lot of like favorites, it appeared to be, games athletes, and I was neither. So, I just was like, I want to get on staff. Can I intern? I went to South Brooklyn. I went to all the boxes around, and I would see my friends and other people that started interning before or even after me get hired. And, but it was just, I forget what I was reading or watching something recently just about, people that you fail and how that has to make you better. And that's how I took it. And I didn't mean to. I didn't know that I was doing it at the time. I think it's just when you really care about something, you're just like, I'm going to keep going. And if we've thought about, I guess if we purposely did that a little more often, it would probably all be better. But it was just, I remember I don't think I talk about it. I remember my 10th internship, which wound up being my last. After day 1, Curtis Bowler from Washington, out by you guys, he's currently the owner of the very first affiliate, because there was a couple in front of him and they are no longer affiliates. So he's now the first affiliate. And after day 1, we go back to the hotel after dinner, and you're like uncertain how you did that day. You're just sitting there in stress. And he goes, he looks at me. He's one of the most huge, strong dude. Looks at me. He's like, well, probably not going to hire you. And I was like, and he didn't mean anything bad by it. That's just who he is. He's a very direct. He's in charge of the athletes at the games every year. You see a guy with a monocle. I don't know if you guys know who. Yeah. He wears a like, that's how crazy he is. He has a monocle. Like, who has a monocle? 2020. So, but he goes, yeah, I'm not gonna hire you. I'm like, and I remember I was like, all right. And I go back to my room. Keith Wittenstein, Coach Panda, was letting me stay with him, because that is an intern, you have to pay your way. So he's letting me stay with him. And I remember opening my computer and looking for the next seminar that was going to be in the area. Even though I knew like they probably weren't going to let me back after this, but it just wasn't a thought. It was just like, all right, now I got to figure out. And then after the next day, he, changed his mind.
Wow.
So.
Because you kind of were looser, just kind of let go, just
I
about
remember
too much.
It's very nerve-wracking. I mean, it's
for sure.
To me, I mean, I have a degree and I think it's harder than that. Like, you're on edge for probably like 96 hours, because as the seminar is coming up, you start to stress out. Friday, as soon as you get the email, like who you're with, especially when you know them a little bit, you're like, it almost adds another layer of stress. And then having seen all the people that haven't made it over the years too, as whether they interned at the same time I did or after I was on staff, it's tough. But I think that's also why the seminar staff care so much. It's like, you can't make it if you don't care, and that only makes you care even more.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were in that chapter, when you were talking about trying out for the seminar stuff, because you were saying like in your mind you felt like you crushed it. So was it, looking back now in hindsight, do you feel like you did crush it, and it was like, can you look back and see like, okay, this is where I messed up? Or do you feel like it was something arbitrary? Or can you pinpoint now, like, what were the reasons it took you 10 tries to finally make it?
Because I was terrible. Because I was really big. Because I was terrible. But like, when you say, can you pinpoint it? I'm like, yeah, that hour. I think I talk about it. I was trying to read through, but I think I say what Nicole said to me at my level 2. I don't remember if I say that somewhere in the book, but she was like, people love being around you, but you're a terrible coach. She basically said when I passed my level 2. And I think to some extent, and it's like a lot of coaches, probably you guys all experience this, like you go back to your box and you're like, I'm the best. and no one's telling you otherwise. So you just continue to think you're right over, it's getting driven in like, I'm right. And it's a bad habit. And then, so you then go and do your thing and you're like, that crushed it. I did my normal thing. And then like specifically my seeing and correcting, because I just ran with presence and attitude, and if I was at a, if you look like, you remember like when you play like Madden back in the day, it was like speed, toughness, this, that. It's like for a character, mine would be like presence and attitude, and then it'd be like teaching. All these would be like, if you needed one guy that was really good at one thing, that's all. And so in part, failing so many times did force, I had to get better, because everybody kept saying the same thing, which is, I suppose, good news, right? You're getting the same feedback from all 10 were different flow masters. So, but it made me a better coach today, for sure. And a better, and the chapter I wrote about the muscle up, like having to really earn my muscle up, same thing here. Like, I think this is what helps me to be a better coach to coaches, because I was so bad. Like a coach that was good, you take Austin, who from day one can like smell lack of hip extension. He happens to be a great coach, but you could see him being like, don't you see it? Like, don't you see his knees, his hips, and his ankles? I'm like, wait, what? I wasn't watching. What did I see? So you need to be bad in order to be that good coach. And also understand the struggle that you're going through.
Yeah. Thanks.
But you could do it if you could make it through the, boot camp for the stormtroopers of Israel. I forget the name of the division, but I think, you when it's fun when you're on staff and you see the interns, even if I'm not the one judging them, you can tell the ones that really want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell?
Well, first of all, they don't ask you how much money do we get paid. I've had that happen. One guy be like, so how much do we get paid when we're hired? I'm like, you're not getting hired. Let's not even worry about that. Or, like, another, like, how often will I work? Like, those kind of things. I remember, like, when I was interning, it was nothing but I need to make this thing. But I think you could just see the passion. People that do there's some little details within an email, say, and it's not hidden message, but you can tell the ones that really like read through it extensively and took the time to do that, or they're sitting there taking notes, watching, even if it's their second, third, or fourth internship, ahead of someone asking to fold up chairs. Just the same reason you guys probably have coaches at your box that you think are good and ones that you think are, turds, for a lack of a, because that's what you almost feel like those people are. Like, I care so much and you don't care at all. Like, don't do this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if given, I want to ask you a question, make seem like it's coming out of left field, but okay, because it is. But if you were still a box owner, an affiliate owner, and circumstances occurred as it did 19 days ago, how would you navigate that? How would you help your community navigate that?
It would, I'll tell you what I think I would have done, but I can tell you, like, the people that were put in that position, like I mentioned, David, it was, and there was some point, more so during the pandemic even, there was a time where I'm like, wow, like, I thought I knew how I would have handled this, but I don't feel comfortable giving as much advice as Fern per se, because I don't know how I would be going through it. But this specifically, I'll use current day me versus, because originally I would have been like, probably like just blindly defending Coach Glassman. So present day me, I would have tried to get ahead of it. I don't think I understood quite the level of it till probably Sunday afternoon. I didn't, only simply because I didn't see anything till Sunday morning. I remember it was happening as we were on the Black Lives Matter episode recording it. Like, we were talking about something that was like yesterday, but already completely out of touch because this
Yeah.
new thing happened. So anyway, I think I would have just tried to get ahead of it and reached out to my members, both social media, email, and said like, look, we love CrossFit. We don't stand behind what Coach Glassman said. Give us a couple days to navigate this. Give us a couple days to really find out more. Because I think that's really like, there was just no information, and it was hard to, and especially as someone who does know Coach Glassman a little bit. I mean, we've texted, he knows me. I certainly would never have been like, he's racist. Like some of the stuff Andy said, I'd be like, yeah, I might be able to see that. But you wouldn't have been able to convince me. I mean,
Right.
I've just, they tried to get me to go to Kenya one year to build schools. I was like, I don't want to go to Kenya. Like, I don't want to build schools. Like, they weren't doing that because it was making the news. Like, my mom didn't forward me anything about that, but she's forwarded me every New York Times article about it, So, but it would have been hard. And I think what happened next? It went from the tweet to Andy, right? Was the next step. That would have been tougher. Like, that really hit home a little bit. I've had people reach out that were like, that I was around that, or it was even like that. Some of that stuff happened to me, and thinking about like your wife, your mom, if you have kids, you're just like, I don't want them to be around that. Like, and that's when I was like, okay, I almost was leaning towards like affiliates. Think about what you want to do because you're using the methodology, but I'm okay if you leave. And I really was getting there. And I don't know how much I said that, but and right on that, I mean, I spoke to David Saturday, and that podcast came out Friday. So, that really hit home. But now with all things that have happened, and maybe again, I have a little more insight. I was on a call with the guy, but I think, I mean, people wanted him out, and even when he retired, it wasn't enough, which I can understand. But, he sold. I mean, no one should be feeling sorry. I think, whether it was 50 or $75 million, he's rich. Like, whatever definition you give to your daughter, you can be like, that guy's kind of rich too, But, I think at this point I would have, whether I had decided to de-affiliate or not, I would have become a CrossFit affiliate again. I think so far, at least, this guy appears to be saying the right things. But whether he turns out to be great or terrible, you should be doing it just to support the community. The community that spoke up should now be the community that's standing up. Or else, what were you standing up? What were you, speaking up about? What were you actually trying to? You made a change. The games athletes that dropped out, the affiliates that de-affiliated. You made a change, but it'd be like the protesters out there protesting, getting, some things moving in the right direction, and then continuing. Like at some point, it's like, cool, we accomplished this really amazing thing. Now let's take it to the next level.
So one of the demands, I don't know if to call it a demand, but what they ask for is that CrossFit will create a board of directors, and it's not going to be just led by one person. Doesn't matter who that is. Do you know if it's one of their plans, if there's any plan to do that, or still nothing to know?
I honestly, I have no idea if they plan on doing that. But I think, and that was one of the things, and I know there's probably some people saying we want to see whether it's, Dave around or not anymore based on, what was said. And that's a tough one for me right now. Like, I really am thinking, because Dave's a great dude. Like, it's hard. And you realize when all the things that went down like this in Hollywood, and people were like, I can't believe, this, like, you can't believe that someone you respect is doing these. It's weird to be attached to that. But, like I was saying, 18 days was a very fast time for $1 million company to sell. I don't think we should now be like forcing the hand at the next and the next and the next. What I can say is this guy seems like the kind of guy that's listening to the community and also running a gym, he does run a gym, but running bigger businesses. I'm sure he had board of directors and things. I think as far as even just him having his own checks and balances, it might be something that they're interested in.
Yeah.
But I could see it. I also think, affiliates want to have more of a voice than they deserve. And what I would say when I still owned an affiliate. Like, what other companies are you like basically a stockholder and you have this tremendous say? They I think it just goes back to they care, like they really care about it. So they want the best in mind, and it influences your gym. But it's Tim, go back 2 questions ago. I don't know. Like, that's tough. Like, that's why I don't fault affiliate owners for making any decision. I was just always encouraging them to think more about it than reacting. I think just given the world where it is, it's so reactive.
Yeah. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah.
And social media makes it even easier.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on that, you can kind of see not wanting to be too reactive on sort of either side, right? It's like, well, maybe, affiliate owners could have paused or just say, hey, we're going to take in more information. Okay, now there's a change made, but, now still want to be able to take in more information before sort of making.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
And
right,
so,
Brian? Yeah.
And so that, but then I guess so my question then is like, what additional information or sort of, what things might we expect to hear and in some sort of time frame where then it's actionable by affiliate owners, that are maybe it's like, hey, yeah, this looks like a reasonable first step, but I'm not quite sure yet. But you'd want to bring them back in the fold if you could. And so like what, and I imagine maybe, there's probably been some things discussed, but maybe or not know, but just in terms of, hey, what can we continue to do to sort of communicate such that we get some of the affiliate owners a little more comfortable?
Yeah, and I think the truth is none of us know, and we all have kind of different levels of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, it might have been CEO. For Laurent, it might be I need that board. It's like people with the pandemic. Some are willing to go out to bars. Some are, staying at home. But I think right away, a few things were done very quickly. Coach Glassman, if you would have told me the day after the tweet, Coach Glassman retired, I'd be like, no way this guy retires. I would say no way he sells the day before it sold. So, and I still think we can't underestimate that 18-day number.
Sure.
Because from rumors I was hearing is like he's knuckling down and he's not going anywhere from very close people to him. So it was really a very short window from the moment he was like, okay, I'll sell this thing. But I think, Dave immediately brought in, I forget the affiliate ambassadors, right? Which was something. He kind of said he was going to put Rich in charge of the games to allow him assumingly more time to run this thing. And then, obviously the sale is the biggest thing, but then I think what Eric did is someone's addressing racism, someone's addressing, sexual misconduct, which needed to be done at that point. Like, I think they need to somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to post Black Lives Matter. Like, I think, I don't know what the hesitation is. Obviously it's a bigger decision than I'm sure for me to put a post up, but I think that's what a lot of people are still waiting on. If you ask me, at least from what I'm seeing and on social media feeds.
Okay.
Does that seem true at the individual level?
Well, yeah, I think because we're in San Francisco, so because of its politics, its progressive nature, I think many of the boxes were out making a statement up front. So for them, going back to what you said, I think the members already knew that many of the boxes were inclusive, et cetera. So I think that was almost like, and that to them was the understanding of CrossFit. They didn't see, there are times that for the members that we coached or we interact with, if I say Romas, they have no idea. If I say Kelly Starrett, even though he's here in San Francisco, they have no idea, right?
Right.
I'm like, wow, I'm like an ancient person, right? And he literally is here in San Francisco, right? So I think they just many of the members looked at the individual box as their CrossFit experience. It wasn't until,
And they should.
yeah. And it wasn't until, like you said, the New York Times, right, came out, because that's separate from listening to individual podcasts, because
Right.
that is even getting meta into,
Yeah.
CrossFit.
No one knows. Most people don't know who Andy Stumpf is that do CrossFit at your box.
Right.
Correct.
So,
The morning chalk up is the bad guys in this, because they're the ones that spread that stuff to the people that wouldn't know any better because they follow that.
right.
Yeah, and I think when you asked us about what you would do, it's that's where you have to decide how much are you separating yourself from the man, because we've been at level ones where you were like, hey, who owns CrossFit? Reebok, Dave Castro, and these are people that are, you talk about the average member. It takes like what percentage of those people go on to level one? They have to really care, and they didn't know any different. So it's tough, but you're right. Once it gets out into this major publication, now I don't know, did any of your members or even your opinions change when it went from like this dude, now everyone knows? Does it change the fact that you still feel your box is inclusive? Like, what about him saying something racist makes you change the attitude of your box owner, other than they're giving this guy $3,000 a year? I'm
Yeah.
asking. I really don't know, because I'm not on that end either.
LeRon, what would you say? What's your thoughts? Because the reason I asked LeRon is how this happened in our box is we have like an internal server known as it's called Discord, which is similar to Slack, right?
Right.
And the messages, I had to turn it off Saturday and Sunday. It was just too much. It was almost like similar to like Twitter. And there were like maybe about 10, 15, 20 people active on Discord that on Sunday. And it was almost like, and it was going back and forth. I just turned it off. So it felt like people, they were feeding on one another. Right?
Oh, I felt that too. I mean, Todd, Fern, and I was like, we can't get to stop talking.
Yeah.
It's just like, and we're like just really having a discourse about it. But yeah, I'm going to listen. But if I don't go to the bathroom, I'm not going to be able to pay attention anymore. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to mute my mic so you don't hear it.
No worries. LeRon, what did you think?
Well, what happens? Wait, can you hear me? This one's barking. What happened? Angie, hey, maybe someone else. I'll go in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the chapters that I liked, or something he said in that chapter about stay in your lane, was he quoted from the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, Stephen Covey.
And he talked about the circle of concern and the circle of influence.
Yep.
And I feel like people in general were getting really riled up, and they just wanted to do anything. So it was like doing anything is better than doing nothing. And doing anything made everyone feel better, even though in the grand scheme of things, that action has very little effect on the actual problem that's occurring.
It's also it's also a more facile way of sort of feeling like you're doing something and I mean, I guess it's sort of local, right? But I mean, just not just feeding off the tweet, but then just everything with the last few weeks, right? It's like everyone sort of their spines are kind of tingling, right? Because of all the George Floyd stuff and everything else sort of out there. It's like, then sort of when it hits home, it hits closer. Like, I think there's also a reaction like, okay, now this is something I can influence, right? It's been within my sphere, my gym. And so maybe that was just, it's kind of reflexive of just this particular time.
I think the time really, maybe that was the reason behind the speed of everything, because everyone was just on edge.
Right.
I think that was a big part of it.
What stood out to me was actually the day afterwards, our owner had a conference call and she spoke with us as coaches. And I would have actually preferred that we had that conversation before it was announced to de-affiliate to the members. But
so that was after that?
Yeah, we found out.
Wow.
She posted it on Instagram and everything else, and then we found out.
And again, having been on that side, like
right.
Sometimes to this day, like business decisions, I make them and then get mad at people below me for not knowing what was in my head.
Right.
And I've been there where it's like, oh, they know,
So we, on our coaching staff, we have a buddy of ours who's he's an orthopedic surgeon. He's a resident, and he's
a coach at the box.
Yeah.
So you get paid a little more than you guys?
No, but he's
orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, he'll tell you that he's poor.
Well, Leron's got his level 3. I mean, level 3 orthopedic surgeon.
So, but I was struck by that call when we were on that Monday, because I think he summarized it appropriate. He said, we went around and talked about what we felt, and he said he felt like he had regret for contributing to the mob, so to speak. And he said he woke up the next day and he kept thinking, what did I do? It was almost like, and he said, I think his words were, he said, it's almost like I got drunk the night before and went out and did something stupid and came back and I was like, what did I do the next day?
Who did I text?
Yeah. So I remember that, and it just stood out to me because it was that feeling like, wow, okay, what's next? What's the next step? And I don't know about anyone else on the call, but I don't know if that's been figured out. It's like that decision was made, that path was made, and it's what's next. It's looking into the abyss. And some people are saying, hey, it's exciting. And some people are saying it's not. So they wanted to go back to how it was before lockdown occurred. So I don't know.
Yeah, the way it went down in our box was everything kind of started to happen, and in our coaches Slack, I wrote down, are we gonna discuss the huge elephant in the room? And I think it was just like an hour or two after we see like on Instagram we're de-affiliating, and I was like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on, let's discuss it first. Let's talk about it. So yeah, I get that reaction from our owner. Like, I'm not saying there's a right and wrong. I totally understand it, but I think we all like kind of felt like, I wish like even just to know before it happens. Like, I'm not gonna tell you what to do. I can advise you or tell you how I feel about it and talk about it a little bit, but obviously it's your decision. But we just would appreciate just like knowing what's gonna happen before bombs are dropping. But we haven't de-affiliated like technically yet. Like, our affiliation is over in August, and I talked to her actually today, and she's like waiting. She's not de-affiliating. She's gonna wait until August. And I talked to her, what do you think about what's everything that's going on? And she's like, I like the direction it's going, and I think it might be good, but let's see. Like, if by August things are gonna get better and things are gonna go the right direction, then she is gonna renew it. If not, then she's not.
And I think that's like what Brian said. We can't be mad at people for being in such a quick, so quick to make a decision one way and then be mad that they're being prudent the other way. Right. So I think that's fair. And, and another thing, to all these people that were de-affiliating, they're not really de-affiliating until their affiliate dues are due again. Right. Or unless they've emailed HQ and said, please remove me from, which they probably haven't. and they probably still own the URLs
Mm.
to their web, even if they change one thing. And so, it's more that probably less people actually de-affiliated and more now just need to decide if they're going to renew again next year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a slightly different vantage point. But, and again, we don't know. I think we probably all need just to feel more confident in the world right now.
Yeah.
To feel more confident, in any decision we make. It's like when there's chaos, it's the culture, right? There's chaos up here, and it's trickling down through everything is what it feels like. So it's hard to know when there's so much uncertainty out there. Focus on what you can control. Your Fran time, your eating habits right now. But as we were all talking about that, and my wife is going to beat me if I don't get off. Okay. As we were talking about that, I was thinking, wow, like we have just this diverse cross section of people right now, just openly having a conversation about this. It's probably more of what the world needs. Yeah. So I think that's cool, and we're all united by this love of this fitness thing. And I think if we're all moving forward with that in mind, we'll be fine.
Yeah, for sure.
So Jason, don't want to hold you up. I know it's late for all of us. So thank you so much. Thank you for the book.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for reading. It really means a lot. Thank you guys. And
thank you. Thanks
hopefully
for coming.
Thank you. When we're allowed to travel again, hopefully Fern and I will make it out to San Francisco.
Come on through.
Best Chinatown ever is in San Francisco, and I love dim sum. And after our honeymoon, I was like, we got to go here, and then I just eat so much that I'm completely not functional the rest of the day. But I love it. So we'll be out there.
We'll do.
Amen.
Thank you guys.
Bye guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head over to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for either Fern or myself, hit us up, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com, or send us a DM over on Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day. Once again, we couldn't do this without the amazing community, and you are a part of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting Best Hour of Their Day.